Hey everyone, I'm Ann. Welcome to the Let's Get Naked podcast, where we dive deep into vulnerability. In this space, we'll explore what triggers us, uncover the patterns holding us back, and discover how to take charge of our own growth. If you're ready to dig in, be vulnerable, and face the tough stuff, then buckle up. It's time to get naked. Before we get started today, I wanted to talk about a couple of things that were on my mind, and it kind of surrounds everything that's happening in our country right now. I have told all of you and everyone in my life that I live from a place where I keep my head in the sand as far as what's happening out amongst the people. And I do that intentionally because I think my energy is extremely important and I protect it accordingly. For those of you that have watched the episode that has dropped with Layla, where we were talking about the Charlie Kirk situation, you understand that I'm very passionate about that. For those of you that don't know, I don't plug into politics on either side because I think it's a circus and I'm not interested. But in the Charlie Kirk thing grabbing my attention, it pulled my head out of the sand. It has been a rough several days as that has been happening because what's happening out in our world right now is so divisive and hard to even get your head around for someone who has had her head in the sand for a long time. My husband told me that this past couple of weeks has been like watching the gal with the orange hair on The Fifth Element, who is the scene where she's watching, war. She types in war and she's watching all of these horrific things that have happened on our planet. And she's just crying, tears are just streaming down her face. And he said that that's how he felt like that has been for watching me since this Charlie Kirk thing has snagged me from my head in the sand moments. So I'm going to say that to say my head has been out of the sand long enough and I'm putting it back. So as he says, it's not a good idea for me to get into politics, and I couldn't agree with him more. It's a pretty disgusting mess out there on all sides, and I want nothing to do with it. I'm tired of people being divided. I think if everyone understood that we have way more in common than we do that divides us, it would be a whole different ballgame. So thanks for letting me out, and I'm going back in. I wanted to also say that I have a book that's coming out that I wanted to plug. It's called The Life Hack Playbook, and it is a book that kind of helps you open your eyes a little bit to the choices that you have, and is going to be very impactful and very powerful for those that are maybe not in the self-help space, but are interested in doing something a little bit better for their lives. So that will be out there. And I'm also working on the AND project, which is a way to unite us instead of divide us. I think there are too many things that we have going on in this world right now that are very divisive, and obviously it's not working well. So let's try a different tactic. With that, I'm going to get into the episode. So, what drives me nuts about the self-help world? Half the time, it sounds like a yoga teacher swallowed a thesaurus and then sneezed it all over Instagram. Raise your vibration, align your chakras, embody your divine essence. Like what? I'm not saying those things aren't real. I'm saying most of us don't wake up in the morning thinking, man, my root chakra feels misaligned today. We're thinking, where's the damn coffee and why is my phone already blowing up? Here's the thing. Healing is messy. Growth is awkward. And if we can't laugh at ourselves while we're climbing out of our own dumpster fires, then what are we even doing? Humor isn't just a coping mechanism, it's a bridge. It's how we take heavy truths and make them light enough to carry. That's why I'm so fired up about today's guest. He doesn't just hand you some lofty spiritual homework and call it a day. He wrote Sourcery, 13 Rungs to Higher Consciousness. And it's part wisdom, part pop culture, part straight talk, and a whole lot of humor. This guy quotes NBA assists and The Simpsons. He takes deep life-altering concepts and makes them not only digestible, but relatable. So if you've ever rolled your eyes at self-help because it felt too fluffy, too heavy, or just too damn serious, today's conversation is for you. because he's going to show us that the climb to higher consciousness doesn't have to be boring, complicated, or sanctimonious. It can be raw, funny, and real, and honestly, that's my kind of self-help. Today, I'm stripping it all off with Justin Shaw. Justin is a mystical comedian, spiritual Sherpa, author, and a sorcerer passionate about empowering people to reclaim their self-worth and manifest their highest potential. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's cool to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious about your book, but I also want to kind of get into where you even got to the point of writing a book. So maybe you can kind of give a little bit of a background before we dive into what the book is about, and tell us about you and where you came from, maybe just the 30,000 foot view of what makes you who you are.
Yeah. So I feel it's always important to, let people know that, there's sympathy and there's empathy. Sympathy is kind of hearing someone's pain, and empathy is feeling it with them. So I certainly have empathy for people when I hear their pain, because I've been through my fair share, and comparing traumas is this doesn't really accomplish much. Kind of the war story thing. Trauma is trauma, pain is pain, and we all experience pain because we're very spiritual beings trapped in this very physical world, and that's something that kind of unites us all. So, but my childhood was. Emotionally, it was neglectful. I don't like to get into it too much. My mom did the best job she could, but it was just her and I. And my brothers and sisters were much older. They were much older parents. And by the time I came around, my dad, there was a crack in the marriage had morphed into a canyon. So he was kind of around more when I was little, and then kind of got out. So it was just her and I, and it just was an emotional vacuum. The word love was not used. There wasn't a lot of hugging and, emotion, or, talking about anything approaching vulnerability was out. I didn't get the sex talk or stay away from drugs, or, it's good to hang out, and just anything approaching vulnerability. And so most of my childhood was spent kind of alone in my room. And, physically she was present, but emotionally she was absent. So most of our time it was her in her room and me in mine. And so pop culture was kind of my first escape from pain, and comedy, and food as well. I would say that snuck in there as well. But before drugs and alcohol, that's what my big escape was. So, growing up in kind of that time of the early 90s, and I just was such a huge Saturday Night Live fan, and that was when they had their Yankee lineup of like David Spade and Chris Farley and Adam Sandler, and Jim Carrey movies were the greatest, and The Simpsons were at the top of their game, and just these things just like drew me in, and I found that I could imitate some of the voices, and I could be funny and make people laugh, and I could gain friends this way, and that took me out of my pain. So that was like my first drug, was making people laugh. And so that's where I found my escape, and both in the movies and then kind of, just almost memorizing them. And that when I wrote the book, there's so much of the pop culture and this ancient wisdom that was kind of filtered through me and my subconscious, my experiences, and American pop culture. So, what I feel Jesus was such a great teacher and leader was because he spoke in such easy to relate to parables, of the time. Mm-hmm. And that's why people drew to him. And these times require different parables. You go to a 20-year-old and say, it's like putting new wine in old wineskins. Don't know what that means. It takes some explaining. So, but pop culture is something that just, unites us. And it's the one thing I found that I can teach this mystical stuff that I had experienced later on. I don't know how long you want me to go on, but that's kind of my childhood. But we can get into the things of adulthood, certainly, of how I these awakenings. My bliss attack is what I call it, and everything. But that was kind of essentially my childhood, which led into my early, my late teens and early 20s of the drug abuse, and I've been. I've been to jails and rehabs and halfway houses and, park benches even. And so I've had my fair share of really tough times. So that's when kind of the spiritual journey started.
How did the drug stuff show up for you? Sounds like you were a teenager when that kind of presented itself as something that was an escape, I'm assuming, or?
Yes.
Okay.
So that was the one thing that I found, I don't even have to do anything for a high, comedy and making people laugh is like, I kind of had to work for that, a little bit. And So I was later, I hear people that, start drinking at 11 or 12, I was still very much in childhood at that time. So it was more like 16, 17, but, of course it starts with marijuana and booze, and that's how it usually starts. And then it escalates into other things. And so, but, part of my problems was that I had all these kind of issues and from having such a neglectful childhood and being kind of just spiritually, emotionally messed up. So I got sent to a lot of therapists and doctors, and part of my kind of drug escape was they prescribed me things that I really, really liked. So part of my turn was seeing these doctors, and they were just kind of feeding me pills at the time. So between, the illegal drugs and the legal ones, that's kind of what spun me out into my 20s. That just, you mentioned dumpster fire. It was true dumpster fire. Yeah, that was a dumpster fire time in my life.
How long did that go on? Like, when did you, how many years did that go on before you?
So I got through, I was 28, I think, when I went to rehab for the first time. And, the first time in rehab, I just felt like, just get me clean. I'm struggling right now because I'm physically addicted to benzodiazepines, opiates, stimulants. I was addicted to everything. I was a dumpster myself. Alcohol, everything. So it was just like, just get me clean, get my body clean, and I'll be fine. And so I went to rehab, and that's the approach I took. All the spiritual mumbo jumbo, and it's a spiritual malady, and it requires a spiritual solution, and all this kind of AA stuff. It's like, no, you can keep all that. So I got clean, and that lasted 3 months, which I'm actually surprised it even lasted 3 months.
Yeah.
And so went back out, everything happened again. And my second time around, okay, now I'm open to things. And so that's kind of when I went back, and the second time I was open to things, and I started going to the AA route and the Christian route, and that worked for a time. But it kind of worked till it didn't. And that's kind of when I don't know, AA and Christianity go like, it's like peanut butter and jelly. It's disguised Christianity is essentially what AA is. And so they worked well together. But what I had discovered is that, Christianity for me, I like to compare it to this big, beautiful, nice house, and so I was living in this big, beautiful, nice house, and there's 17 bathrooms, and there's a pool, and there's a game room, and there's all these amazing things. But you're told you can't go outside the house because that's dangerous. There's a nuclear apocalypse out there, and you can't, so that's sort of investigating other religions and other things, and that's taboo. You don't do that. It's like, okay, all right, well, I'll stay inside the house where it's safe. And, I just realized that, after living in this house for a while, that it actually is built on this cracked foundation of control, fear, and judgment. And when my mother was pronounced terminally ill, that's when the house started to crumble. And what made her death so much worse was thinking she was going to hell. She was not a Christian. She didn't go to church ever. So that whole programming inside me, watching her dwindle away for that year was horrible enough, her body and mind, but thinking that she was doomed to this horrible afterlife just destroyed me. Yeah. I mean, of course I went back out and I used drugs and alcohol, and I was full of fear and dread all the time. I must have been so annoying to be around. I'd be like a shepherd in the afterlife now. It'd be like, Mom, it's like taking off a tight shoe, like you're out of pain. It's going to be great. Instead, I'm sure my energy around her was probably horrible. So, and that's when I really started questioning things, and I started. I was the house had crumbled around me. I had to leave the house. It wasn't even a choice anymore. So meditation and these things I talk about in the book, like shadow work and questioning beliefs that were in me that may not be held true, and that's what led to my first bliss attack. Something that was just truly unexplainable and unbelievable to this day. I've had several of them since then, but the first one was just completely transformative.
So at this point, you're a couple of times through rehab. Your mom has passed before this first bliss attack that you're going to explain.
Yeah.
Okay, so
she'd already gone. Yep.
So, and then are you clean and sober when this bliss attack happens, or is this part of a?
I was back and forth. So I was clean and sober. I was sober for about a month. Okay. I wasn't on a consistent. It was like I'd be good for a month or a few weeks, and then I'd kind of have a bender day where it's like, all right, and then I'd go out for like a week, and then I'd like get things back together. So I was kind of in that phase. And but at the time, this bliss attack I was about 4 weeks sober. So there were no. This is completely drug free. There were no hallucinogens. There's nothing.
Okay.
So and that's kind of when I first had kind of this vision of like, wow, other people can have this, and this is what, this is what real unity means. Like if I can have other people and create like a map to like how to do this, it could really change a lot of lives. And so that's where the first kind of vision came in of doing this roadmap to have your own bliss attack. And I realized I had been in airplane mode my whole life. And I realized that 99% of society are still in airplane mode. I think children are off airplane mode. But then we start listening to society and we start getting programmed that this is what girls do, this is what guys do, this is what black people do, this is what white people do, and all these things, get placed in there. And so they programs us to be something that, maybe we're not. So that was the point when it was like, okay, I can start to do that. And I still struggled for a couple of years, but I had connected to a field of energy that surrounds us at all time, and I compare it to like water or fish discovering water. Like to most fish, it's the one fish who realizes they're swimming in water, and it's like going around and telling people, well, you don't understand, we're in this substance, like we move because of it, we breathe because of it, like it's all around us at all times, and most fish are going to be like, what are you talking about? Like explaining water to a fish, that's source energy, is explaining water to a fish, and like so. But I knew that there were other fish out there that knew what I was talking about, and that's when I started like exploring and getting out there. And there were other people that this unified field, the Akashic field, and I found all these amazing spiritual leaders and teachers that have brought me so far. Dr. Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton and Chopra and just all these people that know of this field, and so I just started like listening to them and absorbing everything and realizing that like someone needs to kind of take the reins. These guys are getting older, and like I could kind of do it a little bit different, and I'm starting to understand like how the things work, and maybe I can make it kind of funny and entertaining, and so that's kind of what got me here.
That's a fun spin on things, because I think that is a situation where a lot of the spiritual kind of self-help is very serious, and it doesn't feel approachable, for people that maybe have never gotten involved in that or don't kind of understand any of the things that you're talking about. So being able to have the humor that comes in to kind of, give the examples of things, I think that's very clever actually to be able to do that. I think you get to this point where your eyes are open or you're awake, right? I call it being awake. And then you're like, oh my God, I got to share this with other people, right? I think that's the 13th rung on your chapters, and is like teaching that, right? Or bringing that in. And I couldn't agree with you more, because I feel like that's exactly why we're sitting on this couch. I've got to the place where I'm like, oh my God, I figured out a different way. It doesn't have to be the way that it is, where everyone's suffering and all of the things, right? Which is the reason why I wrote the book that I wrote, because it's like, hey guys, I found a different way. Let me show you these things that are very visual, because I'm a very visual learner, and things that it's like, it has to make sense to me. If it doesn't make sense and it's all of this like woo-woo that's out here and you can't really get your hands on it, that doesn't do me any good, right? If I can't like visualize it and see it and feel it, that's no good. So you being able to say, okay, there's a gap here where maybe you can kind of use humor or your experiences to be able to share that with people, it's a big deal, right? I look at people that are in that space, and that's exactly what everyone's intention is. It's not like, oh, I want to go write this book so that I can make a bunch of money. It's like, I learned a different thing that I want to be able to share with other people. It's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you get to this place of like, okay, you had this bliss attack and you realized that this is happening? What was surrounding the bliss attack? Like, maybe give me the story of that whole thing happening.
Yeah, that was something that, is unexplainable. And, I was meditating at the time, but I was not actually meditating in the moment that it happened. I was just doing kind of a post-workout stretch, but I was doing a lot of things, just healthier things for my body and my mind, and like meditating and just questioning my beliefs. And maybe these things aren't true. And especially the things that got programmed into me of Christianity, of all this stuff and all these rules and laws and things. And if you don't follow them, you're in trouble. And like when I was in the church, it was fascinating. One of the things that I was in there's probably 300 people in this church. And the pastor raised his hand and just said, I'd just like to take a quick survey. How many of you are confident in your salvation? and about 30 people raised their hand. And I saw the pastor's look in his eyes like, oh, that's not good. You know,
Right.
90% of that auditorium was not confident, which means they were living in fear.
Sure, of course.
And I was one of them.
Yeah.
I didn't raise my hand. I was like, no way. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not confident at all. Like, you're telling me like there's a hell and I haven't, you know, what do I deserve? So but all that's it's just this form of control to keep people in line. And that's when I started realizing all that stuff. And so, but it and all these moments came to me. It was like, you know, like the airplane mode was off. And in that bliss attack, I was overwhelmed with feelings of love at the moment, and getting these downloads about, you know, like these former beliefs that I had, and it was like destroying these beliefs. So I was getting these down, and I knew they were true because there's no way I would feel the way I was feeling without these things being destroyed as true. So all these walls started just crumbling down. And I just became so much more at ease, and it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's okay. So I don't need to worry about, you know, my mother not being in heaven, and just all these, you know, the heaven is here and now, and just created, and that energy just carries over. And you know, there's the whole idea of heaven and hell, I believe, is just this. It's that review at the end of our life, that, you know, there's kind of a Akashic review, and if you've been bringing people pain and destruction, you're going to feel everything. And that is hellish. I mean, if you've been bringing pain and destruction your entire life and people not caring about it, you're going to have a hellish experience. But if your review is pretty positive, or if you've done some things and you've changed your ways, and kind of that idea of repentance, you know, it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. I'm not suicidal by any means, but I'm really looking forward to that. You know, that you know, like I'm good. Like when it happens, when it's going to happen, it's going to be great.
Well, you're rooted in love instead of fear. You know, I think people don't realize when it comes to all of these different things, the you know, organized religion, the politics, all of the different things, it's all rooted in fear, right? And so when they stir all of that, whether it's your pastor, whether it's the Bible, whether it's this God that isn't accepting of everything, that has all of these rules, and if you didn't follow all of these things, then your mom's going to burn in hell, and that's the shit you're worried about. It's like, that's a really terrible existence. And I don't think most people understand that it doesn't have to be that way, which is why you are called, and why I'm called to do this stuff where I'm like, hey guys, there's a different way. It's not supposed to be that. It's not, I don't worship a God that says like, okay, I love you, only if. You know, like if you meet these criteria, if you check these boxes, and if you don't, I'm so sorry, go fuck yourself. I mean, that's literally what religion is. And now they're like, you know, I've watched from the outside as they've rebranded themselves religion, right? Because now it's like, oh, now we're accepting of the gays, now we're whatever. I'm like, yeah, but the Bible that you preach says that all of that is wrong, but now you're hanging gay flags outside. Like, what's the message that you're trying to send? Because they're losing followers all day long about certain things because it's bullshit. They're just peddling fear, right? I look at all of these different organizations and the media, it's all fear. Everything's fear-based. When you step outside of that, right, and you're talking about the meditation and the, you know, focusing in on yourself, right, which to me, that's where the source is, right? That lives right here in me. But if you don't get out of all of that fear bullshit, you'll never connect with that. You'll just follow what other people think. You know, when you start saying all of those limiting beliefs are falling away, when you open your eyes to stuff and you say, why do I believe that? Why do I feel that way? If you actually got curious about why you think a certain way, it's like, where did that come from? And I can look back and say like, oh, that was the pastor of this church, which I don't believe in, right? I was raised in an organized religion as well. To me, it felt like indoctrination. It never felt like truth to me. And when you're talking about the things that as you're discovering them, you know that that's true because it feels true in your gut. It's exactly who you're supposed to be listening to, you know, and that's how you know. I don't have to be proven anything by anybody else. I know that the stuff that I was programmed with is bullshit. I also know that limiting beliefs are like handcuffs that aren't locked, and you can just fucking take them off and set them down and keep walking about your life. And I just don't think people say that enough, or they don't say that loud enough, or there's not enough people listening where it's like, why do you believe the things that you do? Get curious about it. Does it resonate with you? Does that feel aligned with who you are as a person? If it doesn't, then you go ahead and just set that down, right? It's that fucking simple. Like, it literally is that simple. You have to be willing to do the work and to, you know, to look at those things and say, does that resonate with me, right? It's not, I say it's that simple, and then it's like, when you're getting cracked open and you're going through all of those things, it's messy work. It
Yeah.
is. But the other side of that, I've never met someone who's awake that goes, you know what, put me back into airplane mode. That's a really nice way to say that, by the way. I say it's zombies and people that are still sleeping, but airplane mode is a lovely way to say that too. And I agree. I think it's probably like 90% of people that are in airplane mode.
Yep.
And it's like, you can keep doing that if you want. But when you realize that in airplane mode, you're very easily manipulated, you're very easily controlled, right? Look at the people
And you're
that...
not living up to your full
and
potential.
you're not living to your full potential. Not anywhere close,
Yeah.
right? Because when
It's a
you
phone
get...
without airplane mode.
Absolutely.
It still works.
It still works, but but like imagine being able to connect with the source just in the same way. I love that analogy now that I keep talking through it. That's excellent because then you turn the Wi-Fi back on and you plug into the, and you have all of the apps, all of the features, all of the things, all of the downloads. When you say I'm meditating and I'm getting downloads, couldn't agree with you more. All of those same things have happened to me over the last 8 years where I'm like waking up to things and realizing I don't have to just numb out my shitty, mediocre life that I'm living in fear that this is going to happen or that's going to happen or this is going to happen. So what, right? I keep death close now. I think that's a lovely thing, right? Don't like, oh, death isn't going to happen. Sure, it could happen today. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to live accordingly. I live my best fucking life every single day, right? Because I know who I am. I'm plugged into the big guy, right? All of the same things that you're talking about. I love that, you found yours in a different way and everyone's going to have their own path, their own scavenger hunt, right? I say it's like a scavenger hunt of figuring out who you are. You got to a place where you're like, okay, this isn't working for me. Whatever it was, I'm going to figure out whoever I am, whatever that looks like.
Yep.
You know?
Fear is it's all one energy. Fear and joy, it's just two sides of one coin. And when we're in fear, it can be our friend because it's basically that energy, flowing through us, telling that something in our, it's that energy throwing through BS belief systems, so and when it's flowing through belief systems that don't align with who we are, it creates fear. And so it's that time to kind of like ask ourselves what we know, why, and not the kind of fear it's like you're standing on a cliff looking down. I'm not talking about that.
No.
That's good time to listen to your fear and step back. But,
Sure.
These random moments of like anxiety and or these, fearful things that don't, that like what I was going through, it was time to step back and stop living, in such fear and reorganize that energy through joy, which is, those beliefs that do align with who we are. So it's an easy thing to it's an easy thing to understand. It's hard to do, but that's why I created kind of the mat and talk about Sourcery as I use the U in there because it is source energy. It separates itself from, wizards and Gandalf and Eye of Newt and cauldrons and such. That's all interesting stuff too, but it's sorcery. It's real magic. It's using that energy to kind of create a whole new kind of thriving life. And and you talk about like the limiting beliefs. The reason I use the number 13, so there's 13 rungs. I was in AA for a long time, so I kind of thought about steps and steps that are very rigid, and AA is that very rigid, strict, change is the one constant in life, and anything like religion AA that never changes, there's something to that. Like change is good. Change is a good thing. So the steps are very rigid and in order, and 1, 2, 3, and you can't work one. You don't mess around. The 13 rungs are very fluid. You move in between them, and there's 13. Steps are good because it's like moving forward is fine, but moving up is better because a bird has a better perspective on things than a worm.
Sure.
So and there's 13 because we live in a society where 13 is unlucky, and that's bullshit. It's not.
Right.
It's a number for the divine and is actually a very lucky number. And in tarot means death, rebirth, and transformation, which is what kind of sorcery is all about. So 13, I want people to immediately start questioning things like, 13's actually not unlucky.
Yeah.
We don't have 13 floors on many hotels here.
I know.
There is a 13th floor, but they call it the 14th floor because they don't want to scare people. It's just ridiculous.
Right.
So these are all the kind of beliefs that I just want people to start questioning. Is like, maybe that's not true. And if it's a belief that's causing fear, it's time to search that.
Right. Well, and also I don't think people realize with all of this stuff, it holds us in cages. Like, the stuff that you're peddling, right? The stuff that's in your book.
Self-imposed cages.
It totally is, right? It's like the gateless gate, You know, you're at this and you're stuck, but there's no fucking gate. You just walk through. You know, people don't realize, like, you're holding yourself into your own suffering. You know, the thing that I was talking about at the beginning of the episode, where it's like, okay, I'm back out. Like, for me, I keep my head in the sand intentionally. That's part of who I am in my life. My husband takes care of paying attention to what's happening in the world, and I don't, because I protect my energy, and it's really important to me. I have a lot of people that rely on my energy, including myself, where I understand that if I plugged into all of those things, I would be exhausted all of the time. You know, so it's like, I've been looking on social media for 10 days and I'm like, rock hard pass. Somebody else fucking take it back. I can't do this. It is really a disgusting thing. But when you realize we're doing that to ourselves, if you don't feel good about that, don't do that. You know, last night I went and meditated for 20 minutes and I came back downstairs and I thought, God, I just feel so much peace, right? Because that's where I get my downloads. That's where I'm, you know, just connected with myself. And I compare that to 20 minutes on Instagram, scrolling, where you feel anxious and depressed and like all of the things. I had a choice on which one of those I'm going to do. I'm going to choose wisely because I'm a fucking adult. Right.
And I make decisions to those emotions. We totally do. The anger and fear, and like we're used to feeling them, and it's just like, so then you're diving in because you want to feel that way. That's the weirdest part.
I know, right? And it's like, what are you doing to yourself? You're causing your own suffering. You know, if you realize, there's an interesting story that I came up this morning, and I just want to share it. There was a YouTube clip or something that I watched a couple of years ago, and it had two people that were from very different walks of life, and they came together and they're videoing them. They were putting something together. It was like a work thing where it's like, okay, they're building this set or this stage or like whatever it was. And so they had to be together for like 3 or 4 hours. And at the end of that, it came out that maybe the one person was something that the other person didn't understand or didn't, you know, was adverse to, right? So maybe it was the other person was gay, or I don't remember what the specific was. But at the end of it, the challenge was, would you like to go have a beer with that person, right? And both of them were like, yeah, I'll go have a beer with you. And I thought, if we all could just lean into that more, right? The things that unite us, the things that we have in common. We all want a better life, right? Why are we allowing all of these things that fuel our fear and hate and rage? Why are we allowing those things to impact us? Because we have a choice, right? You have a choice whether you're going to plug into that nonsense or whether you're not. You know, when I look at politics for the last 10 days, I'm like, this doesn't make sense to me at all, right? We're dividing, we're terrible. Like, we're all human beings. Don't we get that?
It's an illusion.
It is an illusion, right? So it's like, I don't plug into the circus either, right? So when people are getting all worked up about that and they're fucking so angry and they're like letting that bleed into everything in their lives, and I watch these people and it's like rage and anger. I'm like, you realize that's your neighbor Bill or your Aunt Jeannie or your teacher, you know, for your kids. These are just normal people that you've allowed fake systems to completely breed fear underneath, and then just watch it. They're manipulating you. Like, wake up, people. They're manipulating the shit out of you. You don't have to be doing that. You don't have to plug into that stuff. Is politics necessary to make the world go round? Sure. You want to keep You want to keep feeding it the energy? Your energy is going to go where your attention is. Fucking starve it. Right? Don't give it any more fucking energy. The people that profit off of this making everybody angry, stop it. Right? Like, we have the control to be able to do that shit, right? You understand that now when you're looking at beliefs and saying like, why do I believe that? I don't want to. Okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. Let's be real. Life doesn't come with a manual, but it does come with chaos. I wrote this book because I got tired of drowning in everyone else's noise and needed a way to fix my own shit. This isn't some sugar-coated self-help nonsense. It's raw, it's honest, and it's packed with tools that actually work in the middle of real life. If you're ready to stop playing small, take back your energy, and get unapologetically you again, this book is your playbook. You can pick up your copy of the Life Hack Playbook on Amazon or on our podcast website, letsgetnakedpodcast.com. Were you raised religious?
No, I really wasn't. My mom had me kind of go to Sunday school here and there, but once I had a say in the matter, and she didn't go, so she didn't care. It was just, you know, it's like, I don't want to do that anymore. Okay, fine.
Right.
You know, there wasn't much of so it wasn't religious. No, it really wasn't.
So are the 13 rungs based on the 12 steps at all, or is it just that's just the number of things
No,
that, like, as you kind of went through these, what landed? For
Yeah,
you?
no, they have nothing to do with this. Other than the last one. They nailed the last one because the 12 step and the 13th rung are both about, mine is kind of apprentice. There's a sponsorship, so it's about passing it on and the whole thing, like, to get these ideas and these concepts really into your mind and to create change, you have to be able to teach it. Like, that's the whole thing. You have to be able to teach it and pass it on. So they nailed that 12 step, which is very similar to my 13th rung, which is like, find someone to teach these, because it's like, iron sharpens iron. One person isn't helping the other more. It might seem like maybe,
Yes.
like someone like myself might have a better idea on things, but that person that I'm helping with kind of that spiritual Sherpa thing, and I kind of do one-on-ones, they're helping me just as much.
100%.
So other than that one, everything else is totally different.
Yeah.
Completely different.
When you realize that too, I think it makes it even more approachable for people on maybe the outside that look at that and think like, oh, there's these people that are the gurus or the higher. No one's better than anybody else.
Yeah, no,
right? Like,
yeah.
I learned just as much from everybody that I work with as well in life. Same,
Yeah.
and I'm getting exactly out of it whatever I'm supposed to be getting out of it at that time, which is also part of the game, and it's completely fun. I've turned all of this stuff into a little bit of a game because I think people take life too seriously, so to be able to, like, have it where my energy is important and I'm keeping it and I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm being the light and I'm doing these things, and it's life is too short, right? Like, people take things too seriously and they think that the mediocre lather, rinse, repeat, shitty day that you have on repeat is what life is about. It's like, oh my God, wake up, you guys. Fucking wake
Lead
up.
to the next lather and repeat. It's just,
It's
if
like,
you're not, if
stop
your
it.
thoughts aren't, if your subconscious takes over if you're not consciously creating your future, your past is just going to keep regurgitating itself.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. And that's part of what that is just kind of waking people up out of that slumber to get, your attention on intention.
Yeah. Tell me what you think about like being in co-creation with source or universe or the big guy or whatever you say. Do you understand what I mean when I say that?
Yeah.
Tell me what that looks like for you in your life, because that for me is one of the side effects of really getting plugged into yourself and getting rid of all of the limiting beliefs, is that you realize you can just be in co-creation and create whatever fucking life you want.
Oh, it's,
right?
it's wonderful.
It's wild,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. And the main thing for me is meditation. And that's, like my health and where I'm at right now is like a sandcastle. And without daily kind of, keeping it up, you can go a day, two, but after a week it starts to look bad. And after 2 weeks, your sandcastle's gone.
Agreed.
This is something that requires every day. And meditation, source cannot speak to you when you're in a convergent focus, which is what we're in most of the time. It's what we're in right now. You're at the, you pick up the kids, you're at work, whatever. We're in a convergent focus all throughout the day. And basically you're telling source, I'm busy, not now. And so meditation is that chance to take the divergent focus, and it's the broadening of the focus. And that's when the co-creation can start happening. And so that's when you can start getting visions of the future and kind of guide your life in the direction it's going to go. Because you're either consciously creating your life or you're subconsciously creating it. And if you're subconsciously creating it, you're not in charge of yourself. So, that divergent focus, I like to compare it to, it's like if you're standing in front of a wall and you've got your nose on a brick wall, all you're going to see is just a blurry shade of red. But if you take a step back, you make out a brick. Take another step back, you'll make out a few bricks. Take another step back, you'll see like a wall. And take a few more steps back, and you'll see this wall is like connected to something. And then you more back, and then you'll see this wall is just what was originally just a blurry shade of red is actually just this magnificent castle. And you've kind of created this divergent focus, and that is the sweet spot of co-creation, when you can start memorizing who you want to be. Because just like driving a car, if you're not conscious, we don't need to think about driving a car. You just do it, and so you don't need to think about red light. But you do in the beginning. So that was programming that in there, but not anymore. And so many people don't realize that they're programmed themselves, just like driving a car. It's automatic for mediocrity and failure. And they're programmed for one of three things: mediocrity, failure, or greatness. Those are kind of our choices. And so people don't understand that they're programmed for either mediocrity or failure. And until you start going into the operating system and changing things, you've got this virus running, and if you're a program. And if you open up Word can't be Excel. So it's going to be what it is. So but anyone can wake up at any time.
Yes.
And that's the exciting part.
Yeah.
Not everyone is going to, because people like their, it's that fish again. Once you see the water, there can be a good and bad to that. You never want to go back, but at the same time, you're kind of, so much. And so dealing with people who don't know all these things can be difficult, and trying to get them to see the water is even more difficult. So, and some people just don't want to, they're just not interested. So it's just, control is an illusion. You just let it go. But there are people that are interested in seeing the water, and that's what I want to get out there.
Have you ever met someone or found someone who saw the water or woke up or whatever and wanted to unsee that or go back to sleep? I've yet to meet someone.
Me. Okay. In the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah. In the beginning it was, but I realized that, turning, once airplane mode is off, you can't turn it back on. It's like a phone. So the first couple of years I was kind of going back and forth. I was still, kind of doing that, okay, I'll be sober for a while and then bender and then sober and then bender. I was struggling with that even after my first bliss attack. So that was 4 years ago, and it was about 2 years ago that things really, I answered the phone. So the phone keeps ringing. And the phone is annoying you, and it's ringing in the background. It's ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing, and I was just not answering it. So I tried to go back into airplane mode, but I couldn't do it. There's too much, and once you're off, and you can't turn it back. You can try, but it never. The phone never stops ringing until you answer it, and you're just like, okay, it's time. All right, I'm annoyed by all this ringing. Let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah.
It's funny as you were saying that, something came across to me, and I was thinking about all of the people that I've met that are awake, that are plugged in, that are out of airplane mode. All of those people are putting their time, their energy, their money on the line to connect with the people that are still in airplane mode, either by writing books or speaking or whatever that looks like, right? We're all in this place where we feel compelled to be able to do what you're talking about in your 13th rung of, then teaching it, right? And saying like, hey guys, there's a better way. I've never met somebody that's in airplane mode that's doing it the opposite way of like, hey, come back to sleep, right? So that should tell you everything that you need to know about where the better side is, right?
They don't even realize they're asleep.
Right. I was telling my husband the other day, I said, I feel like I've been reincarnated in this same life because I lived up to 39 years old in my addiction and drinking and just the loop, right? That whole staying stuck in the patterns and blah, 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 blah. And so now it's going to be nine years next month. And I look at the differences between the two, and you couldn't fucking pay me enough or give me enough to go back to what that looks like. My life is so ridiculously incredible because of all of the things that we're talking about and being able to understand that I have control over my choices, not over anything else. Like you said, control is an illusion, and you're not wrong. It absolutely is. But I have the control over my small choices to say, you know what? I do feel better when I meditate every day. And when you're talking about the sandcastle and being away from it 2 weeks, that feels about right to me, right? Because like you said, you can skip a day here or there. I start skipping a couple, 3, and I start feeling squirrely, and then you get to 2 weeks and I'm like, why do I feel like garbage? But it is, and when you realize connecting with source is just yourself, right? It's just turning off all of the noise. We all have all of this noise that comes into us. You don't have to plug into that, right? We choose to know that that's a choice to plug into that stuff. There was this funny Instagram thing that I saw recently where the guy that was doing the content was setting up all of these TVs in front of this lake. And so he's got all of these TVs stacked up and then a person sitting in front of that. And it's like, there's all of this beautiful nature and all of this awesomeness. And then you're just bombarded in front of you with the shit that gives you anxiety and depression and fear and like all of that. But when you realize you don't have to watch that, right? Like, you can plug into the other things. You have that choice. It's
your projector. Is the simulation theory. It is a simulation, but it's your simulation.
Yes, you get to choose.
And whatever the creator out there, the source is loves us so much that it doesn't have an opinion what side of that coin we choose.
Yeah.
So it's just critically important. It's the projector. You're projecting your own reality, and the projector doesn't, just like a projector, you put in a movie in a projector and it plays it. It's not going to tell you this movie sucks. No. It's just going to project whatever movie you're going to put in it, whether it's a Razzie Worst Picture winner or an Oscar Best Picture. Yeah. It doesn't care what you put in it, and that's the kind of love that it has for us. That it allows us to be miserable. Yeah. It will allow that. Yeah. If that is your choice, you can be miserable. Right. And that was my choice for a long time. Yeah. And now that I've changed that movie, it's amazing how everything around you starts to change. But it all starts inward, and once that starts to change, but it's a slow process. It's not like you wake up one day, it's like, okay, I'm changed. Right. It takes time, but you start realizing stuff around you starts changing, and it starts matching the energy that you're working on creating, and it's hard rewiring the mind. But like however old you are, that's how long it took to create the person that you are. Right. So it's going to take time to create a new personality, and it's your personality that creates your personal reality. So once you start with the personality and the way you act, think, and feel, that's your personality. Things start to change, and it's amazing. It's amazing how it works, and it's very exciting and cool, and I'm all about it too. This whole journey is new for me, but it's amazing and fun, and I can't wait to see where it goes.
It is. I tell my husband all the time, I'm like, this is the fucking best day of my life. I say that every day, right? Yeah. And it doesn't matter what happens, because I believe that this life is a classroom, right? And I believe that when things trigger you and bump into your shit, I believe that those are things that are like neon arrows of like, hey, this needs some attention, right? If it makes you feel a certain type of way, get curious about that, So you have all of these people who have aren't plugged into how they're feeling about things, or aren't plugged in with themselves. That's where the awesome sauce lives, right? Yeah. Figure yourself out. Figure out what feels true to you. And to me, it's not adding stuff, it's removing stuff. So when you say, it's a hard process, and it is, I agree with that. But it's like getting back to the 8-year-old version of yourself. Think about what was Justin at 8 years old, right? It's whatever 8 years old. I don't mean necessarily that specific age. It happens to be 8 for me. But what was that like, right? It's awe, it's wonder. It's coming from this place of like, wow, this is really cool. And then what happens, right? Life comes along and takes your innocence, or causes all of this trauma, or all of these things that happen, all of these limiting beliefs and opinions and things that the world is putting on top of you, right? People are just dumping on top of you until you just literally feel like a zombie, right?
Embrace the challenge.
Exactly, right? So if you say, I want to get back to that, and I know that I can, right? For me, I know that I can. I live from that place every single day. That place is for me what makes it the best day ever. Every day, right? Because it's sure hard stuff is going to come up. I've worked on myself enough to develop my emotional intelligence, which I think is savagely important. And I think a lot of people that are in airplane mode live from a place of about an 11 or 12-year-old emotionally, right? So we have a bunch of middle schoolers, which is why you see what's happening in the world right now. You have a bunch of middle schoolers who don't have any handle on their emotions whatsoever, and they're being completely manipulated, right, by people that benefit and profit from that.
Children are easily manipulated.
Exactly, children are, right? So then you watch that happen. It doesn't surprise me what's happening in the world at all. It doesn't surprise me. It makes me sad, because people don't realize you have an option with that. And if you want to continue to cause your own suffering and everybody continue to yell at the top of their lungs that I'm right, guess what? Here's a news flash. You're all fucking right. From your unique perspective, right? We all have our unique perspectives of wherever you started, right? Justin has this story of here's where I was born, here's the parents that I had, or the siblings that I had, the trauma that came on top of that, whatever. You're looking at this experience from your own unique perspective. So your perspective to you is right. We have all of these children out there in adult bodies that are trying to convince everybody else that their perspective is right. What a waste of energy. Doesn't everybody understand what a waste of energy? Do you know how amazing life could be if you realized that?
Yep.
Right? So that's my mission, right? That's the mission that I'm on, is to even just show people that there's another option. Is it hard? Sure. Is what you're doing to yourself hard? No doubt.
Yep.
No doubt. You get to choose your hard.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So I watch that, and I kind of find that to be funny.
Yeah, no, that curiosity that you mentioned is really important. There's a very well-known book now by Mel Robbins that's Let Them Theory, which is catching on. But yeah, I had some issues with it, and seems like a nice person. I don't want to attack her work, but it's, it's just kind of that distancing self, from someone. It's good in one sense that you're not letting other people into your own world, but at the same time you're completely disconnecting from them because that's what's allowing you to not allow them into your world. If so that can be kind of problematic because you're not going to create any unity that way. And so instead of just let them, and that whole thing of just don't let them get to
disconnect,
you. Study them, like you said, the curiosity, and that's where I really create unity and find interesting people that, there's always going to be people that cause jealousy and fear and all these other emotions from other people, and it's not only just getting curious what's in you, but like what's going on with them, and that kind of brings it much closer when you kind of like, what's up with this? What happened to this person to get them where, when someone's the whole Karen thing, which anyone with the name Karen, my heart goes out to you, actually named Karen. But there are people, like if you get curious about what's going on, it's something, they're not reacting about the cashier in Target. That's not,
right,
has nothing to do with that. So if you go look deeper and start getting curious, it's like you're realizing that, this cashier at Target, they're pretending that this is the father that ran out of them when they were a kid.
Of course.
And they don't realize it. And so, but that's the kind of curiosity that helps deal with those difficult situations. That curiosity is everything.
The emotional sovereignty of really understanding your own emotions, but then also the emotions of other people. To me, that's the game, right? Yeah. I will sit there with a fucking tub of popcorn and just watch as interactions happen around me, right? I used to always think in my previous life when I was drinking that I needed to be the center of the circus. That was really important to me. I'm completely the opposite now. I'm like, I just want to watch as other people are interacting because that's exactly what's happening. People bump into other people's stuff. They're not emotionally intelligent enough to understand that or to have done any of the work to realize that. Then they react instead of responding, right? They create their own suffering in doing that. And you can just watch as that just spirals out from that point. And it's like, God, if you guys realized how much energy was wasted on that whole thing, and you can have that energy is yours. You can put it into whatever you want to, right? Yep. Being able to plug into yourself and create whatever life you want to live. That's the same. The energy is the same stuff that you're throwing away because somebody bumped into shit that you didn't fix. Like, fix your shit. Yeah. Fix your shit when it comes up instead of like that knock just keeps happening at the door, right? The phone that you're saying just keeps ringing. Like, answer the goddamn phone, right? To figure out that you're supposed to put work into yourself and that you can have whatever life you want to, right? I listen to all of these people that come from these places of excuses. It's like, oh, I can't have that because so-and-so did this or so-and-so did that or this is holding me back or like blah, 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 blah. I call bullshit. I call bullshit on that all day long because I've lived on both sides of it, right? I've walked that whole path and I realized that as soon as I took accountability for my own stuff, as soon as I started fixing all of these fucked up triggers and all of this scaffolding that I built around the trauma that I had and the things that I didn't want other people to bump into, you're just bracing yourself for more of that, right? You're literally just rooted in fear of maybe that's going to happen again. Maybe come at it from the other way of imagine how amazing life would be if I just dropped all of those fucking chains that I'm carrying around, right? All of this invisible weight that I'm carrying. If you're actually able to set that down, you can engage with life in whatever format you want. Like you said, you're the projector. It's your perspective. How do you want to do this? I've watched as I've created this life that I live. It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. Not from, no, it's amazing. I literally feel like sometimes like, oh my God, is anyone watching? Because this is fucking amazing. Just because that's, you can do that. You can just do that. There's no crazy recipe for how did you get to whatever. I started with nothing. I started with literally nothing. I lived the most amazing life I ever could have imagined, right? I have this thing where I say like, I want the 8-year-old Anne to be looking at who I am now and be proud of that. I want the 80-year-old Anne to look back and know that I made a difference, right? That I had a positive impact on other people. I'm living every day in between those two versions of Anne, and it's the best day of my fucking life. Because the 8-year-old Anne would think, oh my God, you're amazing, right? Yep. And the 80-year-old is going to be proud of all of the work that I do where I put my own time, energy, and money on the line to help other people in a way of living their best lives and being able to level up.
I like to say, some people live 90 years, other people live the same year 90 times.
Yeah, and what a waste. Like, if you look at it from that standpoint, because that is a really excellent way to look at that. If you feel like you're in that cycle, right? Where you're living the same year over and over again, right? And look at these people who are like, get up, do the same thing over and over and over again. It's like, there's a different way, guys. There's a different way. Yep. You can keep doing that if you want to, but just know there's a different way. And it doesn't cost you anything other than being able to be willing to do the work to fix your shit.
Yeah, do the work.
That's
and
it.
Embrace the challenge. Like my nephew, God bless him, he'll sit down with one of those Millennium Falcon Lego sets that just, I never in a million years, but he sits down and looks at like 5,000 pieces and says, bring it on. You know, like that's the kind of like, and he says, bring on the challenge. And day by day, and eventually he's got this amazing creation because he embraces the challenge. Yeah. And that's what, I'm still not good with Legos, but that's the way I try to look at it, just embrace the challenge and see it as fun. He sees it as fun. And that's the way you got to look at it.
You know, I had a guest on recently who was talking about things are just things until you paint them a certain way, right? So if I have an experience where I got a flat tire or whatever, and I can be like, oh, fuck, this is terrible. Or it can just be part of life, right? I'm the one who's painting that as either good or bad. If you take that out of it entirely, it just is, right? I got stuck in traffic, this happened. I got this happened, whatever. I'm the one who paints it bad. I also have the same power to paint it as not either, right? Like it just is. That's just life. The bring on the challenge thing. Absolutely. I fucking do that like crazy. When I first started at the beginning years ago, getting to this place of like realizing as I was fixing my shit, as I was releasing these things that I was carrying around that were heavy, they were just invisible weights. As I started doing that and I felt lighter and lighter and lighter, I felt like I started gaining more momentum, and I got to the place where that's exactly where I came from, was fucking bring it on. If I had something that triggered me and it was big, bring it on, right? If I had something where it was like, you know, for me, the universe, the big guy, whatever, usually has to hit me with two big things in order for me to get on my knees. That's a real thing. Like, it isn't just one big thing. It's going to be two really big things of, all right, I'll work on it, you know, but it is this, bring it on. As soon as something bumps into it, I'm just honored that you think that I'm up for that challenge now, because I want to fix that shit and get it released and gone, because the more that I do that, the lighter that I feel. Yeah. So it is a challenge. It's a scavenger hunt of peeling back all of these fucked up layers of Anne that got put on by other people that I've just been carrying around. Yep. You know? I don't
other people's beliefs.
It is. It's other people's beliefs. It's like, what do I believe? What feels true to me? And it takes a minute to get to that, because people don't understand you have so much shit that you're carrying around that had nothing to do with what is actually true for you, you know, and weeding through all of that. That's a big deal. Yeah. You know, figuring out what lands for you. What's something that surprised you about your journey? Do you have something that kind of sticks out about either something that you realized was a limiting belief, or something that you were carrying around that made a big difference for you, or what during your journey was a big pivot point for you of figuring things out?
I would say just when I started letting go of just the belief that heaven was someplace that you go to and not someplace you create. Yeah. That was kind of the biggest. Yeah, that is huge. The biggest change. That is huge. Biggest one. So I'd say that was probably the biggest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
You either create your own heaven or your own hell right here. Yeah. There's not. I don't believe that there's some like streets of gold where there aren't fucking creepy uncles that touched you. Yeah. You know, like, let's get real, right? Yeah. Like, if you really start peeling things back and looking at things from a logical place, there's this
like a bouncer at the gate.
Right, there's this bouncer, and you only get to come in if whatever. But it's like, but that's weird because my fucking uncle that touched me is up there. So like, is that like, how did he get in? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, that's not a real thing. Yeah. Heaven and hell, they're right here. You get to paint it however you want, right?
Two sides of the coin again.
There is, right? And for me, I think it's the positive or the negative, right? It's like a watch battery or those little flat batteries. You either have your negative side up or your positive side up, and you're going to attract the frequency for which you put out there. So if you want to come from a place of excuses and live in a negative thing, and I don't have the blah, 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 misery loves company. There's a reason for that. You're literally attracting that frequency. Just the opposite. You can flip that, right? You can flip to the positive side. Is it hard at first? Does it feel like, oh, fuck, is this real? Like whatever? Yes, it is. But when you realize there's a bunch of people that have walked that path before you, and we're all on the other side going, oh my God, you guys, this is fucking amazing, right? We've got receipts. We'll show you both sides of that battery. We'll tell you which one is better.
That's why I wrote the book. Yeah,
exactly.
It's a map. It's a map.
It is. Okay, so tell people how to find your book so that we can wrap this up. Remind me of the name of it and how to find it, and tell people where to
Yeah,
get?
so it's on Amazon. It just dropped on Audible last week, which is a lot of fun because I get to tell my own jokes and do voices in it. So I
Nice.
read my own Audible. But it's Sourcery 101 with a U, 13 Rungs to Higher Elevation of Consciousness. It's also on Amazon. The website, you can get it on there too. It's www.awakenthesorcerer.com with a U. And then if you can't afford it, like I'll send you a copy.
Yes.
Like I have like PDF or like free ebook. So email is sorcerer13@gmail. And then I've been off social media for 4 years, and it's been
you.
a wonderful,
Good for you.
a wonderful 4 years, and it's really been. It's like a horse putting on blinders.
Yeah,
I ran a
highly
better
recommend.
grace. But I'm back on social media because it's like two sides of the coin.
Yeah, sure.
It can be used for good and evil. So it's I just have Instagram because I have Facebook PTSD. So I just have Instagram. It's sorcerer_13. And so if you want to connect with me there too. But
Excellent.
Yeah, that's all the places.
Excellent. Well, Justin, thank you so much for taking time and coming and chatting with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's our time for today. If you have questions, suggestions, or think you have a story to add and want to be on the podcast, send us an email. Our email address is ladies@letsgetnakedpodcast.com, and do all of the things. Follow, share, rate, and review. We'll catch you next time. That's a wrap.